Hello everyone, Skippy here, and welcome to One Piece episode 901. The next episode to be brought to us by director Satoshi Ito, who himself is working with former character designer Kazuya Hisada. We've talked about both Ito and Hisada before in the 897 and 891 breakdowns respectively, but to quickly sum them up, Ito is a young episode director who takes after Nagamine with his great showcase of scale, and Hisada was our former character designer who assumed the role for a decade and is known for his angular character art that still manages to be close to Oda. Now, not only is it a surprise that Ito is directing another episode so soon, but it's also a surprise to see that Hisada is actually sticking around in a supervisory role. Ever since 891 wrapped up and aired, Hisada's been mainly doing promo animation for One Piece, so I just assumed that if anything, he was just going to stick to that. Like Yokoyama, he's been around since the very beginning of the anime, so I guess it's not too surprising that he decided to stick around, but it'll definitely be interesting to see how he adapts to Matsuda's more rounder looking designs after his more angular looking work defined the show's look for 10 years and some change. So with a director who we just saw a few weeks ago and a supervisor who once held such a high position on the series, will episode 901 be the most odd Wano episode to date in terms of overall quality? Well, let's take a look and find out. This episode covers the last 5 pages of chapter 914 and the first 8 pages of chapter 915, and there is quite a bit of rearranging and liberties taken with the content. Stuff like Tama first being brought to HOLDEM was moved to the end of the first half, Udashima's conversation at the restaurant was moved to before Luffy and Co. make it towards Bakura Town, and Beppo informing Law of Luffy and Zoro's arrival there was moved to the end of the second half. Couple that together with an added filler scene of Luffy fighting Batman in the first half and a completely different entrance to Bakura Town in the second half, with the townspeople getting ready to attack before they even set foot into the town, as opposed to when they were already a ways into it, and you get an episode that's more or less a departure from the original contents of the chapters, despite following said contents pretty well. While the Batman scuffle was a bit much for such a quickly forgotten about character like him, I thought that the liberties taken with adaptation were all pretty sound, and they didn't really take me out of the experience in any way. The second half still feels a tad bit slow in terms of pacing, with the meeting between HOLDEM and Tama, but I was actually very surprised with the adaptation from manga to anime this episode. It made content that wasn't too exciting a lot more enjoyable overall, and since this episode managed to do that while still deviating from the manga, I'd be hard pressed to say that this episode wasn't solid on the adaptation front despite some small issues. In terms of storyboard, I'm very surprised that Satoshi Ito really managed to outdo himself here. Ito's board not only manages to showcase his fantastic sense of scale once again, but he goes all out in just about every respect. Whether it be great use of color, lighting, or cool angles, Ito's board here outshines his board in 897, with him really going out of his way to make sure that your eyes are on screen at every moment. Even the smallest of scenes have a little something added to them, and not only does that manage to make scenes that could have been boring feel more enjoyable, but it also brings an extra punch to the comedic scenes like HOLDEM's argument with his stomach lion. He didn't leave his insane skill to bring atmosphere to an episode behind either, with HOLDEM's entire conversation with Tama making you really grasp how dire and scary the situation is for her, making the room feel tight and compact, along with pretty creative and unsettling usage of shaky cam and distortion that brings an overall uneasy atmosphere to the scene. Slap all that together with some of the coolest usage of compositing that I've seen in this arc thus far, and Ito manages to completely outdo his last board by taking his skills and turning them up to 11, delivering a very visually exciting storyboard that stands as one of the strongest boards in Wano so far. Due to the nature of the episode itself, we once again have one that is pretty light on the animation end. There's quite a few cool cuts of effects work and such throughout the episode, along with some small reuse of Masami Mori's cut from the opening, but the only real highlight comes from our supervisor Kazuya Hisada, during quite possibly the most controversial moment of the episode. Hisada animates Luffy's attack on Batman, and while the scene itself may be controversial, Hisada manages to make it look cool at the very least, with snappy movement filled with dynamic posing and some really damn cool effects work. It's not the most insane scene ever, and it's hardly going to be one that a lot of people will want to remember, but it does what it needed to do. And when the rest of the episode itself still has its small, visually interesting moments here, coupled together with Ichikawa and Matsuda correcting a good amount of Hisada's work, you get an episode that is a bit of a cool visual surprise, despite working with pretty limiting content. I personally didn't expect a whole lot from this, mainly due to the content that it covers not being the most exciting thing in the world, but Ito and Hisada both managed to deliver a surprisingly solid episode that at the very least seems to have fun with tinkering around with its original source material to bring forth a better overall experience. The plot of the episode itself naturally makes it so it won't be too memorable in the long run, but I was still pleasantly surprised by this episode. And if the team of Katsumi Takura and Masahiro Kitazaki can manage to do the same next week, I'll be a bit more okay with the fact that we're kind of sort of slogging through Act 1 in terms of the content that each episode covers. The preview didn't show a whole lot in the way of animation, but I expect quite a bit from Takura and Kitazaki because of how strong their work on the anime tends to be. Anyways guys, that's it for now. I'm Skippy, and after that nutshot, the lion will certainly be sleeping tonight. We know it.